it's Janelle Waz, and welcome back to another episode of Treknalysis. Love him or hate him, Captain Jellico certainly made an impression when he took command of the Enterprise in the Star Trek The Next Generation two-parter Chain of Command. Some say he was fully justified in his actions and felt Riker was in the wrong for questioning him. Others, on the other hand, found him to be a total and were happy to see Picard back in his rightful chair at the end of the episode, as was Riker. And as for me, well, I have a lot of mixed feelings. So today, I'm looking at Chain of Command, but with a focus on Captain Jellico, specifically whether or not he was a good captain. Now, I admit I never served in the military, so I'm largely looking at this as a civilian with an understanding that things are done differently in a command structure. As always, I like being fair, so while I rewatched this two-parter, I tried to make allowances for the military environment at play here. So, let's get it done. Let's
get it done.
But before I go further, make sure you subscribe to my channel. I talk a lot about Star Trek, video games, and whatever else I feel like talking about. And if you'd like to help support the channel, consider becoming a member. Be great to have you aboard. Once again, it's a typical day on the Enterprise.
I'm afraid there's no time for the usual pleasantries. I'm here to relieve you of command of the Enterprise.
What?
Well, that was unexpected. And if you thought that teaser was fast, the episode starts by going at breakneck speed for a while. Don't get me wrong, this is a good episode, but the pacing is off for a little while, maybe to reflect the urgency of the situation. Either way, a lot happens in a short amount of time. The Cardassians have moved their troops from Bajor to along the Federation border. You know, because DS9 is starting soon. And the blonde here, Admiral Nechayev, says that Starfleet suspects the Cardassians are preparing for an incursion into Federation space.
Are the Cardassians ready for a war?
I didn't say war, Commander. I said incursion.
I beg your pardon.
Picard, Worf, and Beverly have been reassigned for a top-secret mission. And a new captain will be in command of the Enterprise, Captain Edward Jellico. This afternoon, with a full-out ceremony.
I wonder how permanent this is going to be.
I don't know. They don't usually go through the ceremony if it's just a temporary assignment.
Yeah, they really hit everyone with this right out of the blue. And then, adding insult to injury, Riker's a tad miffed that he's been overlooked for command, considering he's the first officer and this sounds like typical negotiations, nothing fancy. Nechayev, however, shoots back that they need someone who has experience dealing with Cardassians.
No offense, Commander, but that's not you.
I mean, at that point, why not just give it to Chief O'Brien?
It's not you I hate, Cardassian. I hate what I became. Because of you.
So Riker goes to meet his new captain in the transporter room, and... dude, Jellico is way too familiar!
William G. Riker, class of 57, graduated 8th in this class. I'm looking forward to serving with you, Commander. Do you prefer Will or William?
Will, sir.
Guy apparently looked up Riker's Facebook page. Also, what the hell? Picard's known Riker for like 6 years at this point, and has only called him Will a handful of times.
Do you prefer Will or William?
But hey, maybe Jellico is just that kind of guy. You know, he's real friendly. But then Jellico goes from friendly first impressions to hostile takeover pretty quickly. Less than a minute on board, and he's changing the crew's schedule and wants to review the duty roster and readiness reports from each department.
We have a standard 3-shift rotation.
I'd like to change that to 4 starting tonight.
This guy wastes no time changing everything up, and he's not even officially captain yet. Now, I understand wanting to look over reports. After all, you want to understand the shape your new ship is in. But Jellico's changing up the duty watches, and he hasn't even looked at the reports. I mean, are we sure this guy's right for the job?
I'm sure it'll all work out.
And would you look at the time, it's already the change of command ceremony.
Computer, transfer all command codes to Captain Edward Jellico.
Dismissed.
You just know everyone's thinking this should have been an email. The crew looks very uncertain. They've known Picard for years, and all of a sudden, he's relieved and this new old guy is in charge. We traded one old guy for a new old guy. With hair.
You'll never look at your hairline again in the same way.
Meanwhile, Picard mentions to Jellico that the intel he has for the current mission is 2 years old. Which seems like very old intel because a lot can happen in 2 years. But Jellico is here to help. Let's launch a probe.
Will.
There you go, calling him Will again. Look, I know it's minor, but I look at the other Trek shows and there's a sense of formality between captain and crew. Sisko rarely called Kira Nerys, and even when he did, he had known her for a while. And sure, Kirk and Janeway called their first officers Spock and Chakotay, but neither one of them had last names either. I have a really hard time accepting Jellico calling Riker Will when they just met like 5 minutes ago. It's a little too familiar. But anyways, Jellico wants the Delta Tactical Officer to plop a probe out into space. There's just one problem. There's no Delta shift. Riker talked to the department heads about changing their entire schedule, and it's going to cause
significant personnel problems.
You will tell the department heads that as of now, the Enterprise is on a 4-shift rotation.
Now, I want to say right now, before I go any further, that yes, Jellico has the right to run the ship any way he wants. If he wants to change the schedule around, he can. If he doesn't want to listen to any feedback about it, he doesn't have to. But I think he's shooting himself in the foot from the start. At the end of the day, it's the crew that runs the ship. And if they're used to one way of doing things and you suddenly change it, you risk putting them on a learning curve while taking them into a potentially dangerous situation. They need time to adjust to a new routine, time they don't have. Let's face it, they're not going to be at peak efficiency while they're adjusting. Riker informed Jellico, since he's first officer, that changing the duty roster is going to cause problems that they're probably better off avoiding. To ignore all that is rather short-sighted on Jellico's part. Now, to be fair, Jellico is under the gun too. This can't be an easy assignment for him either. He's taking the Enterprise into a potentially dangerous situation, and he needs to make sure that everyone and the ship is prepared for battle. Not to mention, he doesn't have much time to do it. So on the one hand, he's kind of being a jerk about changing everything up on the Enterprise, but on the other hand, I get it.
Get it done.
God, I hate when he says that though!
Get it done. Get it done. Get it done. Get that fish out of the ready room.
Get her done!
So Jellico's been kicking everyone's so naturally, local counselor and part-time empath Deanna Troi stops by the ready room while Jellico seemingly has downtime. Now, there's a bunch of things I notice in this scene. Jellico is welcoming to Deanna as she walks in. Heck, he even takes the time to show her some drawings his son did.
It's an elephant. I think.
Jellico wants to go over the duty roster with her, and while Troi is happy to do so, she's there for another reason.
I'd like to talk about how the change in command is affecting the crew.
Uh-oh, Jellico's about to get some bad news. According to Deanna, the crew has a lot of uncertainty. They knew Picard for years, and now they have to accept a new captain and a new way of doing things. Suffice to say, they're having some emotional whiplash right now. Now, to Jellico's credit, he recognizes how this could be unsettling to all of them. But notice as Deanna is talking how his demeanor changes. Initially, he was very welcoming, somewhat relaxed. But then she brings him some bad news, and he becomes very stone-faced. He doesn't take bad news well, and he doesn't react well to losing control of a situation, i.e. he was initially leading the conversation until Deanna stated why she stopped by. Now, Troi does slip up here. She suggests that everyone just needs time to get to know each other. Time that they don't have. Under normal circumstances, yes, everyone needs time to get used to each other. But she's talking to a man who, at the very least, is feeling the time crunch, which she should be able to sense as an empath.
I've temporarily lost my empathic sense.
She should have approached Jellico differently, rather than saying everyone needs time that we don't have. Predictably, though, Jellico says, well, I don't have time for that, so you handle the situation and make them adjust. And again, he's being inflexible and forcing a new schedule on an already stressed crew. And again, that's his right, though not without consequences. But then, the man who was willing to sit down with Troi to go over the duty roster suddenly has a meeting.
I have a meeting with the new security chief in 5 minutes, so the duty roster will have to wait.
Oh, really? Just out of the blue like that? When you were willing to talk about the duty roster 2 minutes ago? I'd like to ask the new chief of security if this so-called meeting even exists. I don't believe you, Eddie!
Captain, he's lying.
But just before Deanna can leave the room, Jellico takes one last parting shot.
I'd appreciate it if you wore a standard uniform when you're on duty.
You? Now, I've mentioned my opinion about Troy wearing a uniform in my Defend Yourself series. Yes, Jellico had every right to tell Deanna, ditch the sexy little jumpsuits and put on a damn uniform. And yes, Deanna should have been in a regular uniform from the start because there was no real reason for her not to wear one, at least on the bridge. But I still resent Jellico because I liked her outfits, and also, there go all my jokes about Troy's outfits! Why do I even bother? While Jellico was in the right telling Troy to wear a uniform, his informing her to wear one comes across not as someone who's enforcing protocol on the bridge, but as a punishment for questioning the way he's doing things. And that's not right. The result is correct, but the motivation really isn't. Again, I don't know how common this is in a command structure, but it doesn't seem right to my civilian brain. Anyone with experience in the armed forces, drop a comment below and let me know. Is this normal? But apparently, Troy isn't the only one suffering. All the changes are getting to Geordi too. Jellico basically wants him to redo everything in engineering in 2 days, and to top it all off, he reassigned a third of Geordi's department to security. And I have questions. One, since when are engineers security officers? I mean, can you imagine Barclay working security? It's a disaster waiting to happen.
I shall speak with my sword, sir.
And two, Geordi told him it was going to push everyone in engineering to their limit and they would have to work around the clock. Why would Jellico reassign a significant part of his team like that? Again, I'm kind of left wondering if this is Jellico being vindictive against Geordi.
If everybody works around the clock for the next 2 days.
Then you'd better get to it, Geordi.
Geordi admits that he's not afraid of the work, but he's not being given the time to do it. So he asks Riker to talk to Picard about it. Even though Jean-Luc could probably use a little tea Earl Grey alcoholic right about now.
Come cheer up, my lad.
But Picard does sit down with Jellico for a meeting before taking off on his top secret mission, in which Jellico starts crapping on number 1.
I can see why he's still only a first officer.
Hey, I'll have you know he turned down 5 promotions in the last week.
What the hell are you still doing here?
I can understand why you turned down a ship of your own to remain aboard.
Picard goes to bat for Riker, though. He's a fine officer, been decorated 5 times, been offered his own ship multiple times. Just give him a chance. You know how Jellico responds to that? Yeah, well, you're probably going to die on this mission. The Enterprise is mine now.
Chances are you won't be coming back from this mission of yours. But the Enterprise is mine now.
Gee, I wonder why no one likes him. Except Data for some reason. And how come no one's talking about Data toadying up to Jellico the entire time?
I never knew what a friend was until I met Geordi.
That is an attainable goal, but it will require realigning the warp coil and taking the secondary distribution grid offline.
Very good, Data.
Now at this point, Picard's top secret mission is revealed. In short, he, Beverly, and Worf are dressed as the local high school drama club to sneak into Cardassian space to see if they're making a deadly bioweapon, and destroy it if it exists. Which involves them running around a cave for a while. Also, why did they send old man Picard to do these stunts? There isn't anyone younger that can do this? Back on the Enterprise, Gul Limek, he's a French Cardassian, arrives on the Enterprise and Troy says that she has to wear a uniform now. But you know who's even more Gul Limek being made to wait for an hour in a conference room while Jellico stares at his kneecap. You know, because dominance. Meanwhile, Troy warns Jellico not to piss off Limek too much. What's he gonna do? Tell her to put on a uniform?
I have been kept waiting here for over an hour.
Then I'm sure you're ready to talk.
We're trying to protect the peace here, right?
They can send someone who can negotiate in a civilized manner.
So, things are going well.
A few moments later.
You gave up your claims on those territories when you signed the armistice.
Yep, really well. By the way, that's a nice Picard you have there. It would be a shame if something were to happen to him.
It's a trap. Come on.
I was looking for the bathroom. Picard is captured by the Cardassians, and he's interrogated and tortured for information about the Federation's defense plans. Information that they think Picard would know, because if the Cardassians were to attack, the Enterprise would almost certainly be sent to the front lines. And of course, this is where the famous
"There are 4 lights"
comes in. There's certainly a lot to unpack from this part of the episode. The scenes between Picard and Gul Madred, which are wonderfully acted by Patrick Stewart and David Warner, treatment of POWs, dignity and identity, psychology, Picard's resolve, Madred's weakness, heck, even about the development of Cardassian society. But all that needs to be its own video, and we're focusing on Jellico today. Heck, I could probably make a couple of videos about this episode. So the Cardassians have Picard, but Jellico claims he doesn't know anything about it. However, as soon as the Cardassians leave, he informs Riker and Troy about Picard's top secret mission. And Jellico orders Riker to go to the rendezvous point to pick up Beverly and Worf. Riker comes back and asks permission for a rescue mission, which Jellico denies because it's foolhardy. Like yelling at a bunch of angry Cardassians after making one of them wait for an hour isn't.
He's gone. I'm sorry, Will, but you're gonna have to accept that.
Well, no, the Cardassians have him. He's still out there, and he was captured during a mission that he shouldn't have been assigned to in the first place. In fact, Picard is so much alive that the Cardassians are using him as a bargaining chip. If you leave, we'll give Picard back to you and forget the whole thing happened. And in fact, Jellico is content using Picard as a bargaining chip as well, which Riker takes exception to.
He's just waiting for some sign of weakness on our part before he starts making more demands.
I can't believe you're willing to sacrifice Captain Picard's life as a negotiation tactic.
Now, Jellico may have a point here. Hey, I like Picard too, but admitting Picard was acting under orders could easily blow up in their faces. At the same time, dude, Picard is a human being and should have never been assigned to that mission in the first place. Now, clearly, both men are under a lot of stress, and it devolves into a yelling match, with Troy in the middle. Dang it, if she only had her sexy jumpsuit on!
Oh, come, sir, just throw in any old thing.
Are you questioning my judgment, Commander?
As first officer, it is my responsibility to point out any actions that may be mistakes by a commanding officer, sir.
You know what? As much as Jellico's defenders come down hard on Riker in this episode, he is doing his job. Yes, I know Riker was already a little miffed from the start when he was passed up for command, but he hasn't gone against orders or even undermined Jellico, at least not intentionally. He's pointed out concerns from the crew, but still executes Jellico's orders. The problem is that Jellico has constantly refused to listen to anyone, including his first officer, which, again, is his right as captain, but it resulted in eroding goodwill with the crew, including Riker. The question I have for Jellico is, why bother having a first officer if you're not even going to listen to him? Jellico relieves Riker of duty and appoints teacher's pet Data as his new first officer. He meets up with Data as well as Geordi and manages to figure out the Cardassians' plan almost exactly, which the audience was already aware of because Gul Madred revealed it to Picard earlier. Now, it's at this point that my opinion of Jellico started to gel. Admittedly, I've been largely negative about the way he runs the Enterprise with the crew he inherited, while acknowledging that he had the right to do everything he did. I don't like the guy, and he probably doesn't need me or the audience to like him.
Everybody has to like me. I must be liked.
But at the same time, there are some positive aspects to the guy. I reached the conclusion that Jellico is a good Starfleet captain, but a poor leader. Let me explain. He's a smart officer. He understands the Cardassians well enough to figure out why they would go through the trouble of capturing Picard. So he has a firm grasp on tactics and military strategy. He can even apply that knowledge because not only did he figure out that the Cardassians had a hidden fleet out there, he was able to locate it, devise a plan to set up mines under the ships, and force the Cardassians to leave, maintaining the peace, and get Picard back. That's a really good skill set to have in a military setting.
Every one of your ships has a mine on its belly, my finger's on the button, and you're in a very bad position.
And even if I don't like his methods, he does know how to get stuff done in a time crunch. Sure, it might have cost the crew their sanity over a couple of days, but he had a difficult task and managed to do it in a short amount of time. He has all the ingredients of a good captain. That being said, being a good captain doesn't mean you can inspire loyalty in your crew, and because of that, I think he makes a poor leader. He's inflexible and doesn't want to take any advice or suggestions from his crew, who is more familiar with ship's operations than he is. Again, his right. He also has a bit of a temper. If someone tells him something he doesn't like, his mood changes very quickly. Heck, someone voices a concern and suddenly their job gets harder, or they're told to wear a damn uniform, Deanna! Coincidence? Maybe, but it's a tad suspect. He's even a bit reckless and callous, even with lives on the line.
You couldn't take those worlds by force, so you want us to give them to you at the bargaining table.
Captain, please.
He's even willing to gamble with Picard's life at the negotiation table. And when you have Riker and Troy next to you who've known Picard for years, it's not going to endear you to anyone. I have to agree with Riker during his conversation with Jellico later in the episode. While you can argue that Riker was insubordinate and willful, maybe because his name is Will, he does point out the reasons why the crew doesn't have loyalty to Jellico other than what's required of duty. He is very close-minded, i.e., he doesn't want to listen to any suggestions. He has to control everything, and he hasn't done anything to inspire the trust of his crew, which, I'm sorry, I know he's the captain, but he still has to work for that.
Trust is earned, not given away.
Now, before I make Jellico seem like a complete monster, he's really not. In fact, when he slows down, he makes connections with his crew. Look at how he treated Deanna when she first walked into his ready room. He was welcoming to her. He showed her the crap drawings his son made. It made him seem like a person. Until she brought him some bad news and he told her that cleavage isn't part of the uniform. Heck, he even makes a connection with Geordi when he slowed down and they talked about the same shuttle route they both piloted when they started their careers. He even attempts to make a connection with Riker, talking about jazz right before he asks him to pilot the shuttle. This makes me suspect that while he's good at getting stuff done in a time crunch, he's temperamental under pressure. And you know what? Maybe this is what makes Jellico a well-rounded character with good and bad personality traits. But how does this episode end? Well, as I mentioned before, Jellico caught the Cardassians with their pants down.
With their pants? A metaphor.
And convinced them to leave and return Picard. Command of the Enterprise is returned to Picard, as it should be, and Jellico leaves the ship saying it was an honor serving with all of them. The episode ended, and I found myself amazed at how many new observations I picked up during this rewatch. I walked away with more of an appreciation for Jellico, even if I still disliked him, as well as some other observations about Picard, the Cardassians, and even some directorial decisions I never thought of before. While Chain of Command can be difficult to watch, especially with what Picard went through, and he recovers a little too quickly at the end, it's definitely one of the highlights of the show, and especially in Season 6. And while I still don't like Jellico, I can acknowledge that he's a good captain who needs to work on being a leader. Who knows, maybe if we saw him more, he would have earned the entire audience's admiration.
It's been an honor serving with you.
So, what do you think? What are your thoughts on Captain Jellico? Did you love him? Did you hate him? Do you agree that he's a good captain but a poor leader? Or do you have a different take on him? And would you be interested in hearing some of my other thoughts about Chain of Command? Please, leave comments below and discuss. Especially anyone who's served in the armed forces. I'd love to hear your thoughts on Jellico's command and my assessment. Again, I'm coming at this as a civilian, so if there's something I'm missing, please let me know. I want to learn. As always, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Treknalysis. If you like what you see, why not give my video a like and subscribe to my channel? Tell your friends! Until next time,
Get it done.